Welcome back to the deep dive. I have a bit of a riddle for you to kick things off today. You ready to play?
I am always ready for a riddle. Let's hear what you've got.
Okay, so picture these five different people in your head. First, a rugged coal miner, working deep in the freezing pits of Siberia.
Okay, got it. Very stark image.
Second, a meticulous owner of a sewing atelier, making these custom high-end clothes.
All right, a complete opposite. Fashion and grit.
Third, a guy riding a bicycle through a rough industrial town with a backpack literally stuffed with cash.
Okay, now we're in a crime movie.
Fourth, a devout pastor leading a congregation. And fifth, a modern ambient music producer who uses artificial intelligence to compose these complex soundscapes.
So, a miner, a tailor, a money mule, a pastor, and a tech artist.
Yep. What do all five of these people have in common?
That sounds like the setup for a very strange joke. Or perhaps the cast of some avant-garde sitcom. You've got the grit, the fashion, the crime thriller element, the spiritual, and the tech. I mean, they don't seem to belong in the same room, let alone the same story.
You would think, but the answer is they are all the same person.
Wow, that is one impressive resume.
Huh.
Or a very chaotic identity crisis.
It's a bit of both, and that is exactly why we are here today. We are doing a comprehensive deep dive into the life and work of a man named Andrey Brener.
The man behind the music label Affartos.
Exactly. And honestly, looking through all the research, his life reads less like a standard biography and more like an adventure novel. We are talking about a journey that spans from the grayscale industrial coal mines of the Kuzbass region in the Soviet Union
A really tough place to grow up.
all the way to the sunny, palm-lined shores of the Mediterranean in Israel.
It is a fascinating trajectory. Usually when we analyze a musician or a creative, we jump straight into the discography. We talk about genres, influences, production techniques.
The usual stuff.
Right. But in this case, you really cannot understand the music or even the purpose of the music without understanding this radical transformation of identity. The biography is the key that unlocks the discography.
Exactly. The music is the destination, but the road to get there was just wild. And specifically, our mission today is to break down what he calls his magnum opus, the album Sapphire.
Which just dropped on January 7th, 2026. So it's very fresh.
Very fresh. But before we even get to the beats and the melodies, we have to talk about that name. Affartos. It sounds ancient, doesn't it?
It is ancient. It's Greek. Aphartos generally translates to imperishable, incorruptible, or immortal.
Imperishable. That's a heavy word.
It's a very heavy word. It's
Yeah.
a term that appears in the New Testament, specifically in the first epistle of Peter. It refers to an inheritance that doesn't fade away, something that isn't subject to the decay of the material world.
So something that lasts forever.
Precisely. And that word imperishable, it's the master key to unlocking Andrey Brener's entire psychology. Think about where he started. He started in coal.
Which is the definition of perishable. You burn it, it gives heat for a moment, and then poof, it's ash.
Exactly. So the central arc of this entire deep dive, the thing we're going to keep coming back to, is this movement from the physical extraction of finite resources, coal, to the spiritual extraction of infinite meanings.
Okay.
The sources describe him as a miner of meanings. He didn't stop digging, he just changed what he was digging for.
I love that. From mining coal to mining meanings. So, okay, let's rewind the tape. Let's go all the way back to the source. 1972, Novokuznetsk.
Yeah.
The heart of the Soviet industrial machine.
A very specific, very intense setting. If you haven't studied the geography of that region, the Kuzbass or Kuznetsk Basin, it's synonymous with heavy industry.
Right.
Imagine these vast, often gray landscapes, brutal winters where the temperature drops to 40 below, and a life that revolves entirely around the mine. It's a place of iron, steel, and black dust. It shapes you.
And his father was a miner, right? It was sort of the family trade.
Yes. In that environment, following your father into the pit wasn't just a career choice. It was almost a cultural expectation. It's what men did.
Yeah.
So Andrey trained as a mining engineer, specializing in open pit mining.
So he was educated. He wasn't just a laborer.
Not at all. He was a shift foreman. He was managing massive machinery, coordinating logistics, dealing with the geometry of the earth. It's a highly technical job.
And he was good at it. The sources say he was making decent money, more than his dad even. He had the respect, the stability, the whole package. But then the 90s happened.
The 90s in post-Soviet Russia, a phrase that carries so much weight.
If you know, you know.
It was a time of absolute upheaval. The old system collapsed, and with it, all the predictable narratives of life. You went from a planned economy to the Wild West of capitalism almost overnight. And Andrey, like so many ambitious young men of that era, got swept up in the chaos.
He didn't just dip his toes in. He got pulled into the vortex of multi-level marketing.
Ah, the MLM craze.
The classic, selling vitamins, herbal supplements, chasing that dream of financial independence.
It's easy for us to look back and laugh now, but you have to understand the desperation and the hope of that time. The old world was gray and crumbling. These MLMs, they promised a future in Technicolor. They promised freedom. And Andrey, he fully bought in.
So he quits his stable engineering job?
He does,
Okay.
which his parents were absolutely furious about. He became, as the sources put it, zombified.
Zombified, that's a strong word.
I think it fits. He was attending these seminars, chanting the slogans, totally convinced he was going to be a millionaire. He moves to Novosibirsk, which is the biggest city in Siberia, to chase this dream. And this is where the story takes a turn that is, well, it's both tragic and physically painful to even imagine.
This anecdote stuck with me. He goes to Novosibirsk in June, and he's wearing a single jacket. That's it. He has almost no money.
He was completely unprepared. He was living in an unheated apartment, sleeping on the floor in June. And it was still cold.
And he lost 10 kilograms in 10 days.
10 kilos in 10 days. He was basically starving. He was so consumed by the idea of success that he was completely neglecting the reality of survival.
And his wife, Nadezhda, whose name, by the way, means hope, which is just too perfect for this story, she was ready to walk away from him.
Can you blame her? He's chasing a mirage. He's this shell of a man. And he told her, with this incredible hubris that people have in those moments, I'm going to live on the Canary Islands, I'm going to drive a Mercedes, and you'll regret leaving me.
Wow.
It's the classic tragedy of a man who has lost his anchor. He thought he was climbing a mountain, but he was just digging a hole deeper and deeper.
But this is where the miner hits bedrock. He's at rock bottom, the business is failing, his marriage is crumbling, he's starving in a cold apartment, and this is where the spiritual turning point happens.
Yeah.
But it's not the typical I found God in a sunset moment. Brener was a hard-nosed skeptic, an engineer.
He was a militant atheist,
Yeah.
a materialist.
Yeah.
He actually read the Old Testament in a single night, not to seek enlightenment, but to win an argument.
In one night. The entire Old Testament, that's some serious speed reading.
It was motivated by spite. He wanted to prove a religious neighbor wrong. So he went through the text with a pencil, underlining every instance of violence, judgment, or war. His conclusion was, this God is too cruel. I don't want him. I don't need him. It was a purely intellectual exercise for him.
So he rejects the text intellectually. But while he's doing that, his wife, Nadezhda, is having a completely different experience.
A totally different path. While Andrey was starving and stewing in his stubbornness in Novosibirsk, Nadezhda reconnected with some old friends, the Killins, who had become Christians, and she found faith.
And when she came back to Andrey, he noticed something was different.
The engineer in him noticed the data points changed. That's exactly it. He looked at her and saw a different output. She was kinder. She had a peace about her that didn't make any logical sense given their terrible financial situation. She wasn't fighting back. She was loving him, and that confounded him. He couldn't calculate it.
And then came the moment that it shattered his entire worldview. He walks in on her praying.
This is the supernatural element that he can't explain away. He finds her weeping and speaking in tongues glossolalia, and he's just staring at her, and he asks, "Who are you talking to?" And she replies simply, "I am talking to Jesus. He is here."
Those have been terrifying for a guy who only believes in what he can touch and measure.
He writes that he felt a tangible, heavy presence in the room, a physical weight. It scared him, but it also broke his skepticism. It was the one piece of data that didn't fit his model. He realized, okay, my model of the universe is incomplete. There is something here I don't understand.
And that was it.
That was October 1999. He surrendered.
So the engineer finds God. But faith, as powerful as it is, doesn't automatically put food on the table. The MLM dream is dead. He's unemployed. He has no money. And this is where we see the first instance of what I would call his divinely inspired pragmatism.
It's a great story. He's walking to park just praying. He says, God, give me real work, something I could do with my hands. I'm tired of selling dreams. And he hears a voice. Not an audible shout, but a clear thought that just dropped into his mind.
Come down to earth.
Come down to earth. You have work at home.
I love that. It's like, stop dreaming about the Canary Islands and the Mercedes. Look at what is right in front of you.
And the logic the voice gave him was brilliant. It was so engineer-like. It said, you are an engineer. You can draw blueprints. Your wife is a seamstress. What is a clothing pattern if not a blueprint for fabric?
It's the perfect combination of their skills. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, tailoring is just engineering with cloth. It's applied geometry.
It is geometry and structure.
Yeah.
So they listened, they opened a home atelier, and they ran it successfully for 7 years. They paid off their debts, they bought all the equipment they needed, and they thrived. It's the first clear example we see of him taking his raw materials, his drafting skills, and transmuting them into something new and successful.
But the adventure doesn't stop there. He's not the kind of guy to sit still. They feel a calling to move to a smaller town, Andrey,
Which he jokingly refers to as the Los Angeles of Siberia, and Zeles.
and zealous. I love the humor in that. But the job he gets there, this is the image I cannot get out of my head. The cash collector on the bicycle.
It is cinematic, it really is. He gets a job servicing payment terminals, you know, those kiosks where people pay their phone bills in cash.
Yeah.
His job is to go around, unlock them, collect the money, and deposit it at the bank.
Simple enough, but at the start, he doesn't have a car.
He doesn't have a car.
Hmm.
So you have this guy pedaling a bicycle through the potholes of a rough Siberian industrial town.
With a backpack containing up to 1.5 million rubles in cash.
In cash. It's an insane amount of money to be carrying around like that.
That is a heist movie, just waiting to happen. How did he not get robbed?
It speaks to a certain, let's call it blissful audacity. Or perhaps he really did feel that divine protection he talks about. But it also shows his work ethic, right?
Yeah.
He didn't wait for the perfect conditions. He didn't say, I can't do this job until I have a car. He just got on the bike and did the work.
Now, we have to pause the action movie narrative for a moment and talk about the emotional core of this biography. Because while all this is happening, the mining, the MLMs, the bicycles, there is a deep, silent struggle going on at home.
Yeah.
They couldn't have children.
This is the shadow that hung over them for 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years of infertility. And it wasn't just a passive waiting, it was actively traumatic. The sources mentioned that Nadezhda had a surgery to remove a cyst, and it was a serious medical error.
Oh, wow.
She developed peritonitis, a life-threatening infection. She almost died. It was a real fight for her life. And after that, the doctors were incredibly pessimistic. They basically said, be happy you're alive. Don't expect to be a mother.
That adds so much weight to everything else. When you're fighting for your life and your legacy, the business failure seems so much smaller, but the pain is so much deeper.
Exactly. But this story is full of what Brener calls puzzle pieces falling into place. He sees these little miracles. Years later, they move to a village. A boss's wife randomly donates 50,000 rubles, which was the exact amount they needed for a specific clinic treatment.
No way.
And finally, against all medical odds, in 2014, their daughter, Ustinya, is born. And later, they adopt another daughter, Xenia.
He calls them the long-awaited children.
That phrase, long-awaited, is crucial. I think it changes his art. He isn't creating from a place of emptiness or longing anymore. He's creating from a place of miraculous fulfillment.
So, family secured, faith secured, finances stabilized. But the geography is about to shift again. The final leap, the move to Israel.
This wasn't just an economic decision for them. They viewed it as prophetic. They moved to Kaliningrad first in 2020, which is that little piece of Russia wedged in Europe.
Right on the Baltic Sea.
And it acted as a sort of stepping stone or waiting room. They were part of a church community there, and they received prophecies about ascending the mountain.
And then, in 2022, they utilized Andrey's Jewish roots, which came from his grandfather, to make Aliyah.
Repatriation to Israel. They settled in Nahariya, a coastal city in northern Israel.
I mean, can you imagine that sensory shock? You grow up in the coal dust and the snow and the minus 40-degree winters of the Kuzbass, and suddenly you are living among palm trees, humid heat, and Mediterranean Sea.
It's a totally different world, a different planet almost. But Brener describes arriving in Nahariya and feeling an immediate, inexplicable sense of home.
Really?
Yes. He felt that his genetic memory, or perhaps his spiritual compass, had finally locked onto the right coordinates. He was where he was supposed to be.
And it is here, in this new land, that the final transformation happens. The miner becomes the musician. The label Affartos is born. But, okay, help me bridge this gap. I understand the engineer becoming a tailor. That's shapes, that's geometry. I get it. I even understand the tailor becoming a businessman. But how does a mining engineer become an ambient music producer? That seems like a huge leap.
It does. But if you look closely, the bridge is the concept of architecture. Brener doesn't view himself as a musician in the traditional sense, someone who just jams on a guitar till it sounds good. He calls himself an architect of music.
There's the engineer coming out again?
Exactly. He constructs, he builds soundscapes, he thinks in terms of structure and layers and blueprints. And this brings us to a really interesting and maybe even a controversial point about his process. He uses artificial intelligence.
He does, and he's not shy about it. He actually studied at an AI institute to understand the technology from the ground up. But, and this is a big but, he always emphasizes it's not just push button, get song.
No, he completely rejects the fast food approach to AI. He calls his process the pearl diver method.
The pearl diver method. Okay, I like that.
It's a fascinating analogy.
Yeah.
He treats the AI as a generator of raw material. It's like a deep, chaotic ocean of sound. He might tell it to generate 50 different arrangements, 50 different melodic ideas for a single concept.
So the AI provides the raw ore.
Perfectly put. The AI creates the noise, the chaos, the infinite possibilities. Brener then spends weeks listening, filtering, digging through it all. He's looking for the one pearl, the specific moment, the specific texture, the one progression that resonates with the human soul.
So he mines the digital data just like he used to mine the earth.
Precisely. It is a hybrid creativity. It's technology controlled by spiritual intent. He believes that the machine can make the sound, but only the human spirit can validate it as art. He's the curator, the editor, the soul of the machine.
I like that. It's not replacing the human, it's giving the human a bigger, faster shovel.
A much bigger shovel. And he's incredibly prolific. He has this new 2026 initiative where he releases short video podcasts on his YouTube channel discussing the mystery of productivity.
He has a mystery of productivity.
Well, he's trying to explain it. He has 30 albums and 62 singles. You don't get those numbers by waiting for inspiration to strike like lightning. You get them by showing up to the mine every day and putting in the hours. He treats creativity with the discipline of a shift foreman.
Which brings us to the main event. The diamond, or rather the sapphire of his entire collection. The album Sapphire, released January 7th, 2026.
This album is his magnum opus. It is a concept album in the truest sense of the word. It's deeply autobiographical, but it wraps that autobiography in a very sophisticated, very clever metaphor. Gemology as psychology.
Okay, let's unpack that. Gemology as psychology, what does that mean?
So Andrey identifies himself as the sapphire.
Okay, and what does the sapphire represent in the system?
Blue, cold, reason, the axis, the sky, wisdom. It is the stone of the mind and the spirit. It's about structure, clarity, and truth.
And his wife, Nadezhda, hope.
She's the ruby, red, fire, passion, blood, the earth. She is emotion and heat and life force.
Fire and ice. It's a classic duality. We've seen that a million times.
It is. But here's the scientific kicker, and this is the part that must have appealed to the engineer in him so much. Do you know what the chemical difference is between a sapphire and a ruby?
I assume they are completely different stones, different minerals.
That's the trick. They are the exact same mineral. They are both corundum, which is crystalline aluminum oxide.
Wait, really? They are the same thing. They look so different.
Chemically, yes, they are the same. The only difference is the trace impurity that gives them their color. If the corundum has a tiny bit of chromium in it, it turns red, and we call it a ruby. If it has iron and titanium, it turns blue, and we call it a sapphire. But the underlying structure, the hardness, the essence, it's identical.
That is actually mind-blowing. And Brener uses this for his marriage.
It is the ultimate metaphor for their union. He is saying, we look like opposites. I am blue, you are red. I am ice, you are fire. But underneath it all, we are made of the same hard, enduring, incorruptible substance. They are, to quote the first track of the album, one kind of stone.
That is the title of the opener, Camny Edney Rod.
Correct. It's a duet with male and female vocals, obviously representing him and his wife. The lyrics explicitly say, Sapphire holds the blue of the sky. Ruby holds the scarlet heat. It's a hymn to a union that is harder than diamond because it acknowledges the difference while celebrating the fundamental unity. It's not about becoming the same. It's about recognizing you were the same substance all along.
That is beautiful. It's a love song, but it's also a geology lesson.
It creates a framework for the whole album. Take the track, My Crystal Love, or Moya Krystalnaya Lyubov.
The notes mention a Sanskrit connection here. He really does his homework.
Oh, he loves to dig into etymology. It's part of his mining process. He connects the word sapphire to the Sanskrit Sani Priya, which he translates as piece of beloved sky.
Piece of beloved sky. That is incredibly poetic.
And the track itself is described as a majestic electronic rap anthem.
A majestic electronic rap anthem. That is a genre blend I did not see coming from a former Siberian coal miner.
That's the Affartos sound. It breaks boundaries. The lyrics are very empowering. Things like, not for crowns, but for the soul, from insecure to winner. He views the sapphire as a stone of protection and fidelity. a compass of the heart. It's about finding an internal axis that doesn't waver.
Which makes sense for him.
Absolutely.
Eh.
Remember, this is a man who drifted in the 90s. He was lost in the MLM fog, lost in atheism. Now he has an axis. He is the sapphire. He has found his center.
That makes perfect sense. He found his North Star, his blue stone. But there's another track that gets really, really deep into the theology. Song of Scattered Light, or Pezin o Rossianev's Fate. You said that this one is heavy on Kabbalah.
It is. And this is where the expert hat really has to come on. The lyrics reference specific Kabbalistic concepts that explain the creation of the universe. It's not something you'd expect to find in a pop song.
Okay, walk us through it. Simple terms, if you can.
I'll try. So it starts with the concept of Or Ein Sof, which means the endless light of the Creator. In the beginning, God is everywhere, filling all existence with this infinite light.
Okay, all light, no space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to create the world, God had to make space. This is a concept called Tzimtzum, the contraction. God pulled back his light to create a void, a vacuum, where the universe could eventually exist.
Okay, so the contraction creates the space for us.
Right. But then God tried to fill that empty space with his light again, pouring it into these divine vessels. But the light was too powerful, and the vessels were too weak. They shattered. This is a cataclysmic event called Shevarat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels.
For shattering.
Yes. And the shards of these broken vessels, which still contained sparks of the original divine light, fell into the darkness. That is our world, a broken world full of hidden sparks of holiness.
And our job, what's the human role in all this?
Our job is Tikkun Olam, which means repairing the world. It is the sacred duty of humanity to find those sparks in the darkness, in our work, in our relationships, in our art, and to lift them back up, to reunite them with their source.
Wow. And Brener puts this entire cosmological drama into a song.
He does. He frames human life as being like divers in the abyss of being, searching for these sparks, and it ties perfectly back to his miner identity.
Oh, of course.
He used to dig for coal in the physical abyss of the earth. Now he's a diver in the metaphysical abyss of being, looking for sparks of divine light.
That is profound. It really connects everything. The mining, the spiritual search, the music, it's all the same action. Extraction of value from darkness.
Precisely. It's the same blueprint, just on a different plane of existence.
Now, for a bit of a change of pace, let's talk about the track I Am Happy, Yashexliv. The sources say this is dark folk, which sounds ominous for a song called I Am Happy.
Dark folk, spoken word. It's a very interesting track. It's a retelling of a very famous Russian fairy tale by Pushkin, the Tale of the Fisherman and the Fish.
I think I know this one. There's a magic fish that grants wishes, and the fisherman's wife just gets greedier and greedier.
That's the one. The old woman wants a new trough, then a new house, then to be a noblewoman, then a queen, and finally the ruler of the seas with the fish as her servant. And in the end, she loses everything and ends up right back where she started with a broken trough.
A classic warning against greed and ambition.
But Brener flips the perspective. He doesn't focus on the greedy wife. He focuses on the old man, the fisherman. In the song, he suggests the old man was already happy just talking to the sea. He didn't need the palaces or the power. His joy was in the process, not the reward.
So the happiness wasn't in the wish fulfillment.
Not at all. The lyrics say something like, "There are no happy idiots. I am happy." And that is my result. It's about accepting the flow, finding contentment in your state of being. Happiness isn't being right or reaching some height. It's about alignment with your purpose.
That's a powerful message for 2026. I mean, we're all chasing the next upgrade, the next palace. And he's saying, just talk to the sea.
Which he literally does now, living in Naharia. He records the sound of the Mediterranean for his ambient tracks. He's living his philosophy.
Right. And of course, we have to mention the tracks dedicated to his wife, the Ruby, Force of Spirit, and Ruby Soul Crystal.
This is where the album gets into a cinematic rock vibe. It's a powerful, driving sound. And it's a clear ode to her resilience. Remember the surgery, the peritonitis, the near-death experience?
Yeah.
He writes in the lyrics, Ruby, corundum firmness that fears no scratches. He's honoring her strength. She is the fire that survived the darkness, the one who endured.
It's a love letter carved in stone.
Very well put.
So Sapphire is out. It's this massive conceptual work, but this guy doesn't sleep. What is the roadmap for the rest of 2026? It sounds like he's just getting started.
It is packed. He has a global plan. In early 2026 alone, just in the next few months, he's releasing a complete guitar collection of instrumentals with classic Gibson and Taylor guitars. He has another album called Enigma, which is modern ambient, and another one called Cognitive Flow.
Cognitive Flow. Lo-fi for work. He really is covering all the bases.
He wants to create music for every part of life. And then in March 2026, He has a saga called Bitter Chocolate, a full 12 tracks.
Bitter chocolate. I'm intrigued already.
And what's notable is the genre versatility. Affartos isn't one sound. It ranges from Nordic fantasy ambient, which sounds like a video game soundtrack,
Right.
to Israeli folk pop fusion, to this cinematic rock we just talked about. He's not bound by genre.
And the field recordings, you mentioned he records the sea.
Yes, the Nahari influence is all over his recent work. He takes his recorder to the beach, to the streets. He captures the atmosphere of the Mediterranean and weaves it into the electronic textures. It grounds the digital and the physical reality of his new home.
So we've gone from the coal mines to the Mediterranean, from militant atheism to deep Kabbalistic faith, from engineering to music.
It is a total transformation. But if you look closely, as we've been saying, it is not a disconnection. It is a sublimation.
Explain that. What do you mean by sublimation?
Well, think about the miner metaphor one last time. In his youth, he dug into the earth to extract coal. Coal is fuel. It creates fire. But it's temporary. It burns up. It is perishable.
Right, it turns to ash.
Exactly. Now he digs into silence, into technology, into the scriptures. He extracts sapphires and rubies, which are music and meaning. These are fuels for the soul. And unlike coal, they do not burn away. They are Affartos, imperishable.
That answers his midlife crisis, doesn't it? The sources say he had this great fear of degrading, of his life meaning nothing.
Exactly. He found the thing that lasts. He found his incorruptible inheritance.
There's one final story from the biography that I think we have to end on, because it seems to answer the deepest question of all, not just about his work, but about his identity, the father revelation.
This is the most touching part of his spiritual journey, I think. Brener struggled with his identity as a son of God. He would call God Father or Abba in his prayers, but he struggled to feel it emotionally. It was still an intellectual concept.
He felt like an employee, maybe, or a servant trying to do a good job.
Perhaps. A dutiful worker in the mine. But the breakthrough came from a children's book. He bought a book for his daughter about a mother bear and her cub.
The bear book.
Yes. And in the story, the little cub tears his jacket and asks his mom, "Do you still love me?" And the mother bear says, "I am sad about the jacket, but I love you." The cub keeps testing her. "What if I break my toys?" "I love you." The cub needs to know that the love is not conditional on his behavior or his performance.
That unconditional love, we all search for that.
And reading this simple children's book, Brener broke down. He was walking home from the store crying, and he finally asked God the raw question, "Do you love me?" Just like the little bear. And he felt an overwhelming, tangible answer. A voice in his spirit saying, "You are my son in whom I am well pleased." Not, "You are my good worker." Not, "You are my successful musician." But, "You are my son."
That healed the identity crisis.
It did. And that is the foundation of everything he does now. He creates not to earn love, but because he is loved.
That is a massive difference, a fundamental shift in motivation.
It is the difference between slavery and sonship, between working for a wage and co-creating as an heir.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today, from the mines of Kuzbass to the shores of the Mediterranean and into the very structure of the cosmos.
Indeed, it's been quite a journey.
So here is the question for you, the listener, to take away from all this. Andrey Brener found his axis, his sapphire identity, and recognized the ruby in his partner. What are the stones that make up the axis of your life?
That is a good question. Are you driven by the cold, clear sapphire of reason and structure? Or the fiery, passionate ruby of emotion and heart? Or perhaps, like corundum, you need to realize that they aren't opposites at all, but two different expressions of the same core strength.
Something to mull over. If you want to hear how this entire philosophy translates into sound, check out the album Sapphire by Affartos. It's out now on all platforms.
It is worth the listen. A true musical diamond, as they say.
Thanks for diving dip with us. We'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.